Greetings, this is Dr. Della Welch again. This is the beginning of Tape 4 on sales law. We've talked about the fact when there are added terms rule. Now we're going to talk about the rule if there are different terms. This is often called the battle of the forms. On the back of the forms they may have different forms and so different terms on the forms. So what we need to do is, it's called the knockout rule. The different terms knock each other out, and then you go to looking at course of performance. How have the parties performed on this particular contract? That may give us the missing term. Or we could look at course of dealing. How have they performed on other contracts? That may give us the missing term. And usage of trade. Suppose the term talks about fryers. Well, does that mean stewing hens? What is standard in the industry? If it says just chicken, and then that would mean fryers because that is the standard in the industry. These are often called gap fillers, and they can provide the differing terms if the terms are different in the battle of the forms. Now we want to look at sale or return and sale on approval. On sale or return, what happens is the buyer gives goods to the seller, and if they don't sell, then the risk of loss stays with the buyer. The buyer has to give them to the seller, and they have a reasonable time to try and sell the goods, but the risk of loss does stay with the buyer. However, if we have sale on approval, suppose that I go into a fancy dress store and I say, oh, this red sweater, what it does is I think it matches my skirt at home. Can I take this sweater home on approval and see if it matches my skirt at home? And so they say yes, and I get it on sale on approval. Well, I hang it in my closet, and I don't know, but that night a big thing of moss attacks it and eats the sweater. Well, what I have to do is go back to the store and say, you'll never believe what happened, but the sweater was destroyed before I could approve it. Well, the seller has the risk of loss until I make that approval. And because of that, usually the stores have insurance, and they know that. There's a famous case of where someone was a coin collector, and he ordered a coin collection sale on approval. Well, he looked the coin collection over, and it was worth a lot of money, but he didn't really like it very much. And so he didn't approve it, and he gave it to his wife to send back to the coin collection company. Well, she didn't insure it for very much, and then there was a huge loss, and he was sued when the coin collection didn't get back. But he was able to prevail because he said, I never approved the coin collection. So that sale on approval, and the seller retains the risk of loss. Now there's various duties under a contract. The seller has a duty to tender and deliver goods that conform in every way to the terms of the contract. This is often called the perfect tender rule. So if I order 100 bags of sugar from the seller and the seller delivers 99, well, it's not a perfect tender. But I must give him a right to cure if there's time. I call him up and I say, I need one more bag of sugar. And if there's time, he gets the opportunity to cure. So that's a very important term. Okay, the buyer has a duty to inspect and to pay. The exception, suppose it's a shipment COD, cash on delivery. Well, in that case, there's no inspection right. However, the mailman might be covered with jam from Knott's Berry Farm jam that's being shipped, and you know the jam has broken. So they can reject it because it's an obvious defect under COD. One thing that's important to know is the buyer has a very powerful remedy under UCC 2-608, and even after the buyer has accepted the goods, the buyer can revoke acceptance if it is a defect that substantially impairs the value and the seller has made assurances that this defect will be cured. An example is given. Suppose someone buys a yarn couch from a furniture store, and as the course in sale law continues, the couch keeps unraveling. So at the end of the sales law course, the student's sitting on a big ball of yarn. Well, that certainly is a defect that substantially impairs the value, and she can revoke acceptance because the couch is no good. I heard of one case where someone purchased a washing machine from a company like Penny's or Sears or something like that, a big department store by a different name, and the washing machine kept leaking, and she would call the department store and say it's still leaking, and they'd come out and try and fix it, but it would still be leaking. So she finally said, UCC 2-608, I'm revoking acceptance because this is a defect that substantially impairs the value of the particular washing machine. Of course, there's a little offset for having used the machine for a little time, but this revocation of acceptance is a very powerful remedy that the buyer has after they accept the particular goods. We'll go on in further lecture, and we will talk about remedies for the buyer and remedies for the seller. So this will be the end of this tape.